thank you very much. I am so excited to have you all here for the Montana Music Summit, a partnership between the Entertainment Management Program and the Music Summit series. Mr. Rodell Delphin is back there kind of lurking in the back there. We'll say hello to Rodell. Thank you, Rodell. We've got some great panelists and speakers for you. I'm going to let them speak for themselves. However, I did want to introduce Ellen Buchanan, downtown Missoula's music musician. Yay! So glad to have her here and the panel. And away we'll go.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Good. So I'll be moderating this panel, which is basically going to be kind of free form and fly by the seat of our pants as near as I can tell. I do want to preface this by talking a little bit about creating festivals and what the motivations are, and I think there are a whole lot of different ones. It may be whether you're talking about music or art or literature or film, and we have all of those things that go on here in Missoula. It may be promoting a revenue opportunity, creating a business model. It might be promoting a product. It might be to promote a community by bringing people to that community. Improving the economic conditions in an area like a downtown. I've been involved in creating a music festival where the downtown really just needed that shot in the arm. And it may be about celebrating something special about the location or about the genre that you're promoting. And I'm sure there's probably some other ones, but we've got different aspects represented on this panel today. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce the speakers, and then they'll talk a little bit about their endeavors that they're involved in, and Linda and I will kind of wrap it up with a tag team about River City Roots Festival and some of the festivals that we've been involved in over the years. So we have Mike Booth, who is two people over from me. He's from Red Lodge. He does the Red Lodge Songwriters Festival. This past year was its third year, and from what I could tell by going on the website, everything was basically sold out, which is awesome for a festival that's in its third year or fourth year. It takes a while to build these things. To my immediate left, we have Scott Osburn, who's here from Dallas. He is the owner and producer of the Lights All Night Music Festival there. It's in its 9th year, and it's the longest running EDM festival in Texas and Dallas' biggest dance festival. So I'll let him talk about that. And then Linda McCarthy is down at the end. She's the director of the Downtown Missoula Partnership, which includes the Downtown Association. And the Downtown Association has historically produced a number of events in downtown, a lot of them centering around Karis Park. But what we'll talk about to a great extent today is River City Roots Festival, which is not only in Karis Park, but its main presence is downtown on Main Street. And we've grown our audience considerably since its beginnings in 1999. Or rather, she's been with MDA since 1999. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Scott. You want to lead off and
sure.
Talk about what you're doing in Dallas?
Absolutely. So I attended the University of Montana and graduated in 2010 through a lot of guidance and mentorship through faculty and staff of the program. Specifically, Tom Webster was kind of by my side as I kind of embarked on discussions with agencies, building business models, pursuing offers and shows in Missoula. And from that, I went back to Dallas and had a very close friend who was my business partner that he was able to bring capital to the table, and we essentially grew what was a hotel party that we'd been running out a ballroom in 2008 and 2009 for basically just, it was an after party for the Cotton Bowl football games that were going on in Dallas. And the idea was we're in a burgeoning festival market, kind of at the early onset. This was during the time when I want to say Bonnaroo and the Coachellas of the world are maybe in their, at least pre-10 years of being around. And we identified an opportunity to expand his 600-person party into an event, and we named it Lights All Night. We booked an artist named Ghostland Observatory, rented out an atrium in between a hotel. It was basically a a business park, but it was inside and it was attached to a hotel and some offices. We covered the ice skating rink and called Lights All Night, booked the talent, and sold 6,000 tickets for the inaugural Lights All Night. And then from there, as young, ambitious businessmen, had grandiose ideas of building the next Bonnaroo or Lollapalooza, and went to the largest room that we could possibly find in Dallas, which was the Dallas Convention Center, which has, I want to say, about 1 million square feet in all. But we decided that that was a bit more than we could handle, so we booked 2 of the larger rooms, which were about 300,000 square feet, and raised capital from friends, family, and then local investors in Dallas, and expanded the event to 2 nights. Booked a lineup that included artists all the way from Tiesto and Girl Talk and Diplo and Big Gigantic. Had some consultants on board as well who had been producing a festival in upstate New York. And in the first year, actually sold about 15,000 tickets a day over 2 days. And from there, we moved to several different venues throughout the years. We took it outdoors immediately after that to 3-day, kind of expanded a bit too quickly, and then reformed the model back to a 2-day show, and have been working at the Dallas Market Hall for the last 3 years and have a long-term exclusive contract with them, and just are kind of continuing to try to develop the experience and continue to book great lineups. And that's kind of where we're at. It's, we're just kind of going with trend lines of electronic music and hip hop music, and trying to bring in new production elements, performance art, and things like that. And I guess, when you talk about motivations, certainly one of our motivations at the beginning was we wanted to build a mega festival, and my motivation today is just, it's exciting to always be able to continually develop something and to continue to refine the process, and we're always working to refine the marketing and the branding and the production sides of the event. And all that flows down to operational flows and production flows and things like that. So that's kind of what we focus on.
So one of the tricky parts with festivals is you've got to book performers pretty far in advance, because there are 1 million festivals now in the United States, and you don't always know what your revenues are going to be when you're trying to book. How do you navigate that? Do you have investors?
We do. We've been able to kind of formulate a great relationship with some debt financing investors. I'm fortunate to own the majority equity of the business, which a lot of times isn't really the case if you have to go in and have pretty strong equity investors. But we have solid investment in place, and we have a model that we feel pretty comfortable that we refined over the years, and we try to stick within a general range of a talent budget and just a total event budget. But it's certainly not a given by any means, and it's something that as we get down and progress on the marketing campaigns, get closer to the event, that we have the ability to cut back on expenses in areas that we like to think that the public won't really notice, but it kind of gives us that buffer to be able to mitigate as much risk as possible.
So have you thought about taking this beyond the Dallas market?
We actually have. We did Lights All Night Mexico City in 2014, and then we did a Lights All Night El Paso in 2016. And to be honest, both of those times didn't work out as we had planned. We kind of did a licensing deal in Mexico City with the promoter, and we found out that culturally speaking, over New Year's Eve time period, it's just a lot of people in Mexico City are just kind of hanging out at home and hanging out with family. They're not going out for big events. So we kind of decided to stay away from that. And then in El Paso, we made some lapses, we made some errors in judgment on what the opportunities were, and we basically did what's called the double up, and the headliner played Dallas early and then got on a private jet and flew to El Paso to close out the show, which logistically speaking worked. We just didn't get the amount of kids that we needed from across the border to come to the show, because there's just a huge market in Juarez. But it's something that we're open to. I mean, at this point, we're kind of just focusing on the Dallas property, and if a partnership with like a Live Nation or an AEG comes about, I think that'll probably be our best bet in further expansion with their relationships.
So we're going to leave some time at the end for questions and answers, and hopefully you guys will have a lot of questions, so I'll try not to preempt them. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing in Red Lodge?
Sure, sure, and I'll kind of touch on all three of these things as I go through. For us, and what I think is the key to festivals, at least in Montana, is environment, perseverance, and luck. And I am not a musician. My background is in corporate management and event management for large corporations, conventions, those kind of things. So that's the background I brought to it. We started this as an idea that was formed, like most great ideas do, formed over a few beers one night with a friend of mine that happened to be a songwriter. And I grew up in the Red Lodge, Billings area. And how many have been to Red Lodge? So you all know it's not a big community. We have about 2,500 people in our community. As of last weekend, we're at dead end. The road to the Yellowstone Park is shut down for the winter, so that road opens around Memorial Day. So in the summertime, it's our busy tourist season. And I grew up in an area where Red Lodge had a lot of long festivals. And I remember those days, and they were great times to be in Red Lodge. Lots of people would come from long distances. And for whatever reason, most of those things had gone away. And there were some weekend things, but there was nothing multi-day festivals. So we were kind of talking one night and about how great this used to be. And a friend of mine said, "Have you ever thought about a songwriter festival?" Well, I'd never been to a songwriter festival. I'd never seen a songwriter in the round, but I thought it was kind of a cool idea. I spent a little time Googling things and saw what it might be like. And so we put together a plan to have our first songwriter festival in 2016. And my friend Corey had some connections in Nashville, and the luck kind of comes into it. We've been able to tap into a vein of the greatest songwriters in the world of country music. And everybody from Win Varble to Brett Jones to Tony Lane to even Stevens have come and graced us with their talents in Red Lodge, and we'll continue that. We have a little different business model. When I got involved, I had several other businesses in Red Lodge. My wife is very instrumental in the county government in Red Lodge. And so our reputations were at stake. And so my first thing out of my mouth was, we will do this, and I would be involved provided that we cover all of our expenses with sponsorship sales. And before we ever sell a ticket, we know that our costs are covered. And our costs have grown from the first year of about $20,000 to close to $50,000 a day. And we still continue to cover all of our hard expenses with sponsorship sales. Now we supplement some of those with individual contributions. In 2017, we went from a private LLC to a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We did that for two reasons. We did that to attract private money, individuals that wanted to contribute individually versus be a corporate sponsor, if you will. In Red Lodge, although we don't have any corporate, they're all small business sponsors. And then the other reason was in Montana, for those that do business here, there is a fair amount of grant money available through tourism organizations. In our part of the country, it's called Yellowstone Country. I think here maybe Glacier Country. Anyway, Montana is broken up into 5 different tourism districts, and each one of those has money that they provide to promote tourism in Montana, including events like ours. So we've been very gracious. Mike?
I just wanted to say that our folks from Destination Missoula, who have a hotel motel tax, funded this through a grant, and it's important because that's how we're able to do this whole summit. So we thank them, and thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, it is a very important resource to us. We don't know how long we'll continue to get that grant because it's more of they fund startup events, but it's about promoting tourism in Montana. The other thing that is we've evolved this thing now going into our 4th year next year. We feel very we like our direction because we are a songwriter festival. We aren't a band. We're not competing with Red Ants Pants and Moonlight Music Festival and all the other music festivals that are coming up in Montana. So we are different in that we are songwriters. It's all acoustic. It's all original music. We do 15 shows over 3 days in 8 different venues throughout Red Lodge. So they travel between bars and restaurants and then in the evening theaters and places like that. So that's kind of the general overview of what we do.
So are your songwriters confined to Nashville musicians, or do you get involved with more regional and local musicians in addition to the core group from Nashville?
So we have two tiers of songwriters. And our top tier, we call them Nashville hit songwriters. Most all of them write in the country music genre, if you will. Even Stevens, who lives in Idaho now, but he wrote most of all of Eddie Rabbitt's music when he lived in Nashville. Hugh Presswood, who's another Nashville Hall of Famer, he lives in New York, but he wrote many, many songs that you would remember. So they've all kind of come out of that country music genre. And in order to be considered and hired as one of our Nashville hit songwriters, you have to have recorded at least one #1 hit. And most of the folks have recorded many, many more. Brett Jones has 14 to his credit, and Wayne Bartle has, I think, 8. Costas, I don't know who may be familiar with Costas. He's been one of our regulars, and he has, I think, a dozen hit songs. So to be on the big stage, you have to have at least one or more recorded hit songs. And then we have another 12 to 15, what we have traditionally called Montana's best songwriters. And those are people from the state of Montana that come and they play free shows throughout the day in pubs and restaurants around Red Lodge. We are now changed the name of that group. It's now called the Rising Stars Songwriters. And part of that is we're now being able to attract songwriters from, I just hired somebody from Boston, I hired somebody from Vancouver, BC the other day. So we're going to expand that beyond Montana. Our goal is to provide the best songwriters we can afford to pay to come to Red Lodge for these 3 days. The other advantage that we may have as other festivals go, one, it's acoustic, so these guys and gals show up with a guitar. They don't have a band and all the equipment. We don't deal with managers. We deal with all of them individually. And then the other is these individuals make their money for the most part as songwriters. And as I've come to learn, the difference between the #1 song and the #2 song to these folks is probably about $500,000. So they make their money writing songs. So we actually pay them. We pay them $1,250 for 3 days for talent fees, and we give them a $750 travel stipend. So we pay them basically $2,000 to come to Red Lodge and play for 2 days. So if you think about it in the world of talent fees, that's nothing. But the other thing that we have, advantage we have in Montana is, or at least especially in Red Lodge, but for those that have been to Red Lodge or even Missoula, when these people have never been here, come here, especially in the summertime, they look around and they go, this is really cool. And we marry them with one of our local families that have guest homes, so they all stay in private homes. If they want to go rafting or fishing or whatever they may want to do, we make arrangements for that. We take them up to the Beartooth Highway in an old historic Yellowstone Park bus. So we try to really create a great experience for them while they're here in Red Lodge. And many of them that came to us the first time by themselves, have come back another year with their family or wives. And so it is the environment of Red Lodge in Montana that allows us to bring in this quality of talent.
So do you have aspiring songwriters who apply to become a part of this?
Yeah, we have way more songwriters apply than we can hire. And we will try to continue to cultivate that. We are also, last year we launched a songwriting school, and that will really become a main focus of our festival moving forward. I have watched the Crown Guitar Festival evolve over the years up in the Flathead and just marvel at what they're doing, and would love to emulate some of theirs in the songwriting world and just create this world-class songwriting festival, educational component. We also have a songwriting contest that we accept 100 songs and cultivate that down to a one winner that opens the show on Saturday night for our Nashville folks. So we try to give opportunities for everybody that just picked up a guitar to the greatest songwriters in the country.
So what's the composition of your audience?
We really have three audiences. We have an audience that just comes to our free shows, and they get to see a lot of great music. That tends to be a younger audience. We have an audience that just comes to our paid shows. The cheapest paid show we have is $35, and it goes to $45 and then to $100. So to get into the paid shows are not necessarily inexpensive. And then we have a little bit of overlap. So we have a very affluent crowd that tends to support our paid shows, and then more of the general public that wants to come in and have a few beers and listen to music in the afternoon, that don't either have the money or don't want to part with the money to buy a ticket to the paid shows. And fortunately, we don't have big venues. Our three paid shows are 150 people, 220 people, and then 700 people. And we now today sell all of those shows out.
Okay, so this is what I call the Linda and Ellen show. The festival that we're going to talk about is a free festival, and there's to me, free festivals are really important in this whole spectrum of whether you're talking about music or literature or film or any of the other genres that you can work around. But particularly in music, I kind of think of the things we do as being the feeder system for the music industry, because everybody can come and experience this music, and they don't have to spend any money. And so then they'll buy a ticket to see Robert Earl Keen when he comes and plays the Wilma, or they'll travel to Bozeman or Billings to see the infamous String Dusters when they come to town, because they didn't know who they were before they experienced these at a free festival. I'm going to let Linda talk a little bit about the logistics of putting on a free festival, because it can be pretty dicey. Fortunately, we live in a very generous community and have been really successful with sponsorships and fundraising for River City Roots. And then once we've talked about that a little bit, I will talk about a couple of other festivals that I've been involved in, and one of which I continue to be involved in. So, Linda?
Okay. How many of you have been to River City Roots Festival? Okay, so you have a fairly good sense of what it is. It was created in 2006 for two reasons. One, Missoula did not have a signature celebration, and we really felt like, you know, there was a lot going on that we wanted to celebrate, and a lot of things were happening along the river corridor as it relates to amenities and new developments. Things like Brennan's Wave and the skate park and the baseball stadium, so lots of cool stuff happening. And you know, Missoula has a river that runs through it, but we call ourselves the Garden City. So we decided to call it River City Roots Festival. The second reason we created it was to welcome our university students, faculty, and staff back to school and back to Missoula, or to Missoula for the first time ever. So we always have it the weekend before school starts at the University of Montana. And it is a street music and art festival that also has a lot of great food, a family fun fest. So we turn Karis Park over to all the families, and we do children's entertainment and family entertainment. And then we also do a 4-mile run. And 4 miles is different than your typical 5K or 10K or 1 mile. We just want to make it a little bit different. And we do this festival in partnership with the city of Missoula and Run Wild Missoula. Partnerships is a big part of how we make it happen, and it does cost us $120,000 a year to produce. So it is a very large chunk of our budget, and the majority of the revenue comes in from sponsorships. I think about 2/3 of our budget, our expenses are covered by business sponsorships, and as Ellen said, we have a very generous business community that helps us cover our hard costs, and they also provide in-kind services to help with things like marketing and communications. So the other part of the revenue formula comes from the sale of food and beverage. So we do a percentage of sales from both food vendors and from the bar. And then we also have an art show, so fine art and sort of local artists pay booth fees, and we typically have around 30 still artists that set up and sell in the streets. So we close down the streets, and that's always very complicated, because when you close down the street in front of your retailers, they want to make sure that their business is not negatively impacted by that. So, you know, the goal is, of course, to get folks coming to the festival that also want to engage with our downtown retailers and food and beverage businesses. So it takes a lot more than just, you know, putting it into a building and selling tickets. We don't have any ticketing at all, so we don't have that level of management like these guys do. And I think that's a big part of what you have to do in event planning. When you have ticketing, there's a lot that goes on there, but we don't have that, so we don't have to worry about that. But the disadvantage is we don't know who's coming to our festival. You know, when you do an admission-free show, you don't know, you know, what is your target market for a festival like this? What, you know, where are people coming from? And so sometimes that can be challenging, especially when you talk about, you know, who you're targeting with your marketing. When you do a family festival, it's people of all ages, it's locals, it's tourists, etc. It takes us about 8 to 9 months to do a festival like this, and we do it primarily with a couple of staff members and a large committee of volunteers. I think our committee is probably 12 or 14 people. And in addition to booking all the entertainment, which costs about 50% of our budget, stage, sound, lights, and entertainment is about $60,000 total for this event. And then you have sort of what we call infrastructure, which is, you know, insurance and porta potties and policing and, you know, beer and wine and wristbands and tents and trailers and ice and all the things that, you know, kind of go into creating a great experience for the consumer. Because if your beer is warm, you remember that. If your food is bad, you remember that. If the entertainment is bad, you remember that. So all those things need to come together. And in event planning, you always have to plan for the unexpected, because there's always things that happen that you are not prepared for. And you know, a couple of examples that we've gone through, I think it was year 3 or 4 when we blew the transformer in the alley and the power went out and we had a fire in the alley and we shut down power for like 60 businesses on the block.
We did not blow the power, as it turns out. Nobody believes that. We were still
But it
operating.
happened in the middle of our headlining show.
Well, it was Vince Herman of leftover salmon on the stage. Never a good thing.
And
And
another
then it went to
crisis.
Babs and the power blew up there the next year, so.
Another crisis that can happen is you have a lot of garbage and a lot of porta potties, and if they don't get picked up and cleaned up, you know, during the course of your festival, again, the consumer can remember a very poor experience.
I can tell you my barometer for a good festival, and I go to a lot of festivals, is clean porta potties. If you got clean porta potties, you're running a good show.
It's definitely a thing. And you know, lately we've had to kind of beef up our security when you have a street festival with a bunch of people. You know, and you've seen this across the country where, you know, folks will just drive into the festival to try and kill people, you know. So we've had to kind of bar things up a little bit tighter around the edge of the festival and be more thoughtful about crazy things that can happen. And in our organization, we do a lot more than just event planning and production. You know, anything that you like about downtown, we probably have our hands in. We might have our hands in some things you don't like about downtown, but we do about 35 community festivals and events every year. We do the Out to Lunch in the Downtown Tonight Summer Series, Festival of Trees, you know, Garden City Brew Fest, Winter Brew Fest. It takes a ton of volunteers to do all of that, but this year we had an individual pass away at Out to Lunch. I don't know if any of you remember the dancing man or the dancing couple, but you know, again, planning for the unexpected is you just really never know what's going to happen, and you need to be able to make quick decisions, move swiftly, you know, circle your team up when you need to. Lots of different things can happen. So we definitely feel like festival planning season also includes the month after, because don't forget there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen, a lot of, you know, thank yous and returning supplies, equipment, banners, power washing the sidewalks and the street. So lots of cleanup happens too after the festival that isn't always so glamorous. So event planning is hard work. It's late nights, it's early mornings, it's long days. It can be great, you know, when we do music selection. We typically have over 140 performing groups that apply for Out to Lunch in Downtown Tonight. And, you know, our committee loves the days that they're selecting music, because they get to listen to all kinds of things and sort of put together the puzzle for every different genre of music that we want, and making sure that it fits into the budget. And sometimes we're negotiating contracts to try and, you know, fit our budget, but that's a fun part of it. So is food selection. Everybody really likes the day that we're selecting all the food vendors and mapping everything out.
So with respect to River City Roots Festival, my role is, well, partially I came to town from East Tennessee thinking I'm never going to get to hear good music again, because that part of the world is the mecca for all kinds of music. I guess within 2 weeks I saw Little Feat at the Wilma and Daryl Scott in Hamilton, and I thought my life was going to be okay here. But as Linda said, I couldn't believe there wasn't a signature event for Missoula as cool as Missoula is. And so it took me 2 years to convince the Downtown Association to take this big leap and let's try doing this festival. And just kind of backing up, it's really patterned after a festival that was created in Asheville, North Carolina, probably, I'm going to say 40 years ago now. Asheville was an armpit back then. It was awful. And the downtown was dead, which is really hard to believe. If any of you have ever been to Asheville, it's probably the coolest downtown in the United States now. But Belshare was created to bring life back to downtown Asheville, and it grew to be the largest outdoor festival in southeastern United States. It no longer exists, and I'm not sure why, because they quit doing it after I'd moved out here. But I was in Johnson City, Tennessee, and the downtown was really struggling there. And the university there, East Tennessee State University, is what I call a suitcase college. Unlike UM, most of the students commute from outlying areas. So in the summer, downtown is really struggles, the restaurants and the bars and all those places that the students frequent during the year. So we created a friend of mine and I created a music festival there called the Blue Plum Festival, which was patterned after Belshare in Asheville, with the music, the free music, art show, kids events, family events, run, all of those things. It's great. Grew by the time I quit doing it in 2012, I think. It had grown to between 60 and 80,000 people being in the downtown over the course of that weekend. It's changed now. Some other people are running it. I walked away in 12 because I was doing too many other things here. And so a big part of it now you have to buy a ticket for, which I think it breaks my heart, but that's just me. They're building it back up again because the first year after they started doing that, it really nosedived. And so I think they will be successful with that model as well. So then River City Roots is patterned after, once again, Belshare, which is kind of the granddaddy of these big free festivals. And I think Asheville had something like 300,000 people over the course of the weekend in downtown Asheville at their peak. So that's kind of how Roots Festival came about. And you know, one of the things that I've done with both of those festivals is if I'm going to book the music, I get to be a little bit of a dictator. I'll let you suggest everybody you want to suggest, but the challenge is trying to find those up-and-coming bands that you can grab when they're still affordable, because as Linda said, you know, our music budget, and this is stage, sound, lights, and performers, is a little over $60,000, and that doesn't go very far in the world of booking music. So you kind of figure out who your headliners are going to be and what kind of genres you want to do, and I always try to mix it up. So this year, Friday night was a kind of taste of Louisiana and New Orleans. Saturday was much more bluegrass type stuff with the Dusters and Billy Strings and John Stickley. But you lock in your headliners and then you start backfilling with who you can afford. And one of the real tricks is finding somebody who hadn't gotten that expensive yet, but you know by the time the festival rolls around, they're going to be a big deal. And you can't do it every year, but if you keep your ear to the ground, every now and then you score. And we did this year with Billy Strings. He's the hottest thing in bluegrass and newgrass music going right now, and we grabbed him when we could sort of afford him. I was willing to come out of my pocket to make it happen, but didn't have to. Did the same thing a number of years ago in Johnson City when I was familiar with Nickel Creek and Chris Thiele and managed to book them a month before they went platinum and paid them $7,500 to play the festival there. And people drove from all over the United States and brought their kids because you couldn't buy a ticket to a Nickel Creek Festival at the time. And we had to change the whole way the festival was set up as a result of that, because if somebody had a medical problem, they wouldn't have been able to get out. But I talked to people who came from Florida and Michigan, and you know, it was craziness. But that doesn't often happen. And then the other festival that I got involved in when it first started was which is a little bit different model, is the Folk Festival in Butte. And that grew out of the National Folk Festival, which National Council for Traditional Arts in the DC area goes into a community. They have a 3-year commitment. That community has to raise roughly $1 million a year for those 3 years. They put on this festival, and then they want to leave a legacy festival behind. And Butte was one of the cities that was just crazy enough to step up to the plate and say, we're going to keep on doing this. And they raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $800,000 a year to put the Folk Festival on, which once again is a free downtown, in this case uptown, music festival. Doesn't have all those other ancillary things going on like runs and family fun festival and the art show, although they do feature Native American crafts and a kind of an arts and crafts market. But this year, I think, was more successful than any of the national festivals were in Butte or any of them up to now. We had about 170,000 people in Butte over the course of that weekend. There's 6 stages, 20-some acts. And what I do with that is I book all of the acts. I don't select all of them. I'm a part of selecting them, but I don't get to be a dictator with that one. But it's an incredible economic infusion into Butte, Montana. What's the population there is probably 30,000, and you're putting 170, always over 100,000 people there. So the regional economic impact is monstrous with the Butte Festival. So, you know, that's kind of a little bit of a spectrum. And you know, to piggyback on something that Mike said, one of the things that we're able to capitalize on, and particularly in Butte, not as much here, but is selling people on coming to Montana, letting you pay them to come and see Montana, because 95% of the people that play Butte have never been in the state of Montana before. And they're just blown away, and they bring their families, and they do a week-long vacation, and they go to Yellowstone, and they go to Glacier, and they beg to come back. So, you know, we've got something here we can sell with that. A couple years into it, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the series that HBO did called Treme, about New Orleans after the hurricane. And Kermit Ruffins and the Barbecue Swingers were kind of the featured band on that. Well, I wanted to bring Kermit to Butte, and everybody said, well, you can't possibly get Kermit Ruffins to come to Butte. And I convinced him after many, many conversations to let us pay him to come and see Montana. And he brought 3 daughters with him at the end of the day. And he's been back since, and he's been back twice since, because he fell in love with the place. So that's a big selling point with a lot of these bands. And some of them that have been here love playing Missoula, especially the ones that play roots. And so they'll cut their price a little bit to get to play Missoula.
I think part of the reason why they like to come to Montana is because they're treated like normal people, not superstars. You know, they can walk around town and nobody's like chasing them down trying to get their autograph, and you know, they just get to live like the rest of us live and enjoy the beautiful scenery.
I think the other thing that I've always tried to do, and it's worked, is that really treat your performers well. I mean, you build a reputation for being a festival. If any of you are interested in getting into this sort of thing, you build a reputation, and it spreads through the industry that they're really going to treat you right in Missoula. And that makes it a lot easier to book a lot of these folks. They don't get treated that way all the time. And so it's an important component.
And word of mouth matters. It matters big.
Huge. So I think with that, if nobody has anything else to add, we'd love to take some questions.
Well, first I'll just echo on what Ellen said about River City Roots Festival being a great place to discover some new music. And definitely Billy Strings I'm still like coming down from that. That was one of the best performances I've ever seen. So Thank you. I was just wondering if you guys wanted to talk a little bit about the marketing and how you get the word out. Kind of different genres here with EDM, country, or more the country genre, and more like the bluegrass, where not a lot of these are, maybe the radio stations aren't playing as much of these genres unless you find really special, great local radio stations that do that. But what kind of your marketing plan looks like to reach your demographic?
I mean, I can jump into that. I mean, we have a little different challenge in that, you don't know who Tony Lane is.
No.
But if you heard the songs that Tony has written that were recorded by Tim McGraw or Faith Hill or George Strait, you go, oh yeah, I know that music. So we don't market individual songwriters. We kind of mention who they are, especially if they've been in the National Hall of Fame, but there's no name recognition for that. So we really have to try to market an experience, a musical experience. And we do buy media. We buy Billings Media, Cody, which is that northern Wyoming media. But I would tell you, if you walk down the street during our festival or engage somebody that is from New Mexico or Las Vegas, say, where did you hear about it? Almost always they say Facebook. So we spend a significant amount of money on boosting ads and posts in Facebook. I came here last April and spoke to the entertainment management school and came out of there with a young lady named Kendall Chuling that became our social media guru last year. And just amazing how many people she reached through Instagram and Facebook. So although we spend several $1,000s on traditional media, the other thing we do a lot of is we talk to the Billings Gazette and a lot of magazines, so we try to get as much free publication, PR, as we can. And there's ways to grow these things in a grassroots way that you don't have to risk thousands and thousands of dollars to make it happen. Just start small and go from there. And if you put out a quality product, people will take notice and the media will take notice.
That said, how much time are you putting out the word about the festival and the different things that are happening in the experience so that you're gaining the earned media that you're searching for?
We probably spend, and I say we, myself mostly, I spend about 1,000 hours a year on our Songwriter Festival, not including the festival itself. It's about half of my professional time. We spend a significant amount of time on PR. I have a contact in Billings who does all our media buys for us because he's in that world. But it's not, a month before you crank up and throw a festival together. It's, last week we were in front of our local publication. We gave $10,000 check to our local school's music department. And so right now, we're broadcasting that to the world that we're giving back. So it's constant. You have your media before the event, but you want to be in touch with throughout the year. You don't want to be forgotten.
As you know, Alanya, you have like the spider approach to marketing. You got your hands in a lot of different things, and we couldn't do it without our local media partners. Thank you very much. We also use social media. We also do a lot of postering and a lot of, e-communications around the community. We typically will market about 100-mile radius. And then we expect that our entertainers are going to help market too. They're going to add it to their calendars. So if you're following the String Dusters, they're playing in Missoula and when, and so you get that, spider outreach on your marketing. And we do a nice printed program, and so we can really highlight the artists that are coming to the show as well as the musicians and a lot of different aspects to the program piece. But we're probably spending about $12,000 to $14,000 annually on marketing.
And I will tell you from experience, the year we hired Robert Earl King, somehow my personal cell phone number ended up on his webpage as the contact for the festival. And I'm in Johnson City running the stage for Blue Plum Festival because I was still doing that one then. And I'm getting calls from Oregon and Utah and Washington going, are you sure this is a free festival that's going to happen in Missoula? Yeah, I'm sure. are you really sure how's, and so I could kind of keep up with a lot of the demographics of where folks were coming from, which we really struggle to do because it's a free festival and we can't trace area codes and zip codes and, those sorts of things with ticket sales. So it's, social media, the internet's made a huge difference because everybody's following their favorite performers. And if it's a free show, boom, they'll travel.
There's a question back here, yeah?
This one's for Scott. I was looking on your guys' website and I saw that you guys are partnering with Rescue Me, a charitable organization, or partner is what it says on here. And I was just wondering how you guys manage finding a cause that really speaks to the vision of your festival, and if there's any way that artists who are performing can get involved with that as well.
So Rescue Me was a partnership that was done with one of our sponsors through, and I believe that one was done through Budweiser. But every year we try to find something that kind of speaks to the internal team and myself personally of who we can work with. And when we're producing an event that does, on average 30,000 people over 2 days, really kind of lends us a great opportunity to do simple things like adding anywhere from 50 cents to $1 per ticket and being able to give back to charitable funds. We also try to help out when we can if there's any kind of last minute emergency type situations. Last year with the hurricane down in Houston, prior to our phase 1 artist announce, we were able to get all of the artists involved, and basically we sold a ticket type that had a $10 additional donation available to give back for people who'd been displaced by the hurricane, and then all of our artists matched that donation as well. So, I think we were able to raise something like $30,000 in a week and give it to the Houston Food Bank. So it's, I think festivals are incredible in that way. They're incredible vehicles to create these communal experiences, but at least we have found that, people that want to gather are also similarly people that want to give back to and find power in numbers. So.
Yeah. It seems like everybody has made a mention that a large portion of the money has come from corporate sponsorships. So walk me to the very first time you have this idea, I'm going to start this festival, and you approach a corporate, for sponsorship. What do you do?
You have better luck with the people that you know and the people you have a relationship with. You have to sell your vision, so oftentimes that means, putting it in a way that they can visualize it too. So on paper and video, using examples from other communities, sponsor packages from other festivals.
So you're building like a template, you're building some sort of proposal, and
providing value for that sponsorship, giving them a reason to support it beyond just doing something good for the community. What are they getting out of it? Do they get any marketing out of it? What kind of presence do they have at the festival? What can they do to interact and engage with the entertainers? When we sell sponsorships, we provide VIP passes, so our sponsors get to mingle backstage with the entertainers. So you build a package that you think has value to it, and you tier it out so that your larger sponsors get, more return for their investment. But you also have opportunities for small businesses to contribute to the festival at, the $200,000, $500,000 level, for example. And I'll tell you, when you start a festival, it's a year-long planning process. And I made a list here. It says, the whole plan for a year, secure your venue and date first, establish your budget, timeline, task list, supplies, including cash. Don't forget, you need to take a lot of cash, and your cash should not be 20s and 50s. It should be 1s and 5s. And then, build that committee and that core of volunteers to help you with it, because even if you do it in the private sector, you still need a ton of volunteers to help. So,
I would add to that. I think it's different probably, for you in Dallas than it is for Montana. When you say corporate, in Montana, those are small businesses. And, you know, even if you go in after a Coors or a Budweiser, you know, for me, it's either through Briggs or Intermountain Distributing out of Billings, which by definition are still small businesses. So you're going to deal at an owner level for most of it. And I think there's a couple, you know, you're not the first person that knocked on their doors for money. And for chances are, in a smaller community, maybe not even that day. So the key is you want to look for somebody that goes beyond giving you a check and build a partnership. Somebody that wants to involve themselves in your event, come to your event, talk to them, make sure how it works for them. And so they see value. You know, a sponsor said to me one time, you know, I said, how do we make this work for you? And he kind of looked at me dumbfoundedly and said, what do you mean? I said, well, what can I do for you to make this value? He said, you know, half the people, I see them once a year and they come in looking for money. I never see them again. So make sure there's a value for the people that are giving you those checks. And if you do, then they'll come back every year. And okay, it's a lot easier just to, you know, the next year if they really embrace what you're doing.
Yeah, in Missoula, it's not corporate sponsors like Birkenstock or, you know, Martin Guitars. It's our closest thing to a real corporate sponsor is probably Big Sky Brewing, and they've been with us since day one.
You said a percentage of your funding comes from the sale of the food and beverage, and alcohol beverage. What kind of deal, how does the deals kind of typically look like and work out with like the food and alcohol sales then?
We do it a couple different ways. With Out to Lunch in Downtown Tonight, which are 13-week events, we do a flat fee up front and a percentage of sales per event. And with our single day events, we just do a percentage of sales. And it's anywhere between, you know, 10 and 25% depending upon the event.
Gross or net?
Gross profit. So 10 to 25% of your gross profits would be contributed back to the festival to help cover costs. Yeah.
And we're always looking for a better way to do that. I mean, we've changed our model with beverage sales, and we're doing it a little differently than we did in the beginning. The other thing that we're trying to work with our food vendors on is one of the focuses that is most challenging is we would really like to have a green carbon neutral festival. And that's achievable. Telluride Bluegrass Festival has done that. Rocky Grass has done that because of the commitment of the people that put that on. But it's not easy. And one of the issues with the free festival is if you've got a paid festival, you can get volunteers and they get free admission. So it's easy to get volunteers for those festivals. So you can have somebody manning every compost, recycle, trash bin so that stuff doesn't get intermixed. Free festival, there's no incentive there other than just wanting to give back to the community. And getting volunteers is getting harder and harder every year for all of the events, not just Roots Fest. And Butte faces the same challenge, but people in Butte will volunteer for anything, I'm convinced. Man, that's crazy.
The other thing that's important to think about around food and beverage is liquor liability insurance. You know, you want to have good liquor liability insurance, good coverage, and you want to have good policies and practices for managing liquor.
And you always want to keep the police happy.
There was a question we have here in the back row first.
I was wondering how the change in the economy, like it happened in 2007, affects you industry-wide.
Really great question. I'm gonna let you guys stab at it.
Do you stay in business or do you go down in flames?
Well, 2008, I was running a $1 million printing company in Denver, Colorado, and it went down in flames. So I know what a recession like that can do to business. I haven't run a festival through that, but I would tell you that it you know, for me, it probably wouldn't affect my high-end supporters, but it's that middle tier, you know, that, yeah, I think it would, you know, their discretionary income's gonna get squeezed. And you're gonna also lose some sponsors because a lot of, you know, some of those sponsors don't have the available funds to contribute to, you know, things like this. So you're gonna have to work harder, you know, and I would tell you the other thing, you know, we don't operate with any debt. And like in any recession, Business 101, people that go down are the people that are sitting around with a lot of debt, and it will kill you. So cash is king in the event business, just like any other business.
So do the big big event producers, do they plan for that? Do they think about it at all while they're doing their process?
And the simple answer to that question is Live Nation's stock price in 2008 was 7 and 8, okay? And now it's 50, all right? So,
Yeah.
You know, I want to, before we move on, I want to tag on to something you said about volunteers. And I was part of a festival this summer, and it was a first-time festival at Big Sky called the Moonlight Music Festival. There's a couple other people in the room that were there as well. But what happened was a really bad experience for a lot of people, because what they did before the festival, they didn't have the sales that they wanted. They flooded Big Sky itself with tickets, and they lost their volunteer base. Their volunteer base went down probably over 60%. Because all of a sudden, what you're saying, these people that had volunteered to get in to see Bruce Hornsby no longer had to volunteer, they were given a ticket. And so it really was hard to manage that event because we didn't have any volunteers. Personal experience is I was running transportation for them. We tried to load 2,000 people Saturday night onto buses with 2 of us. It was not a pleasant experience. So I just trying to tell you what volunteer management at an event like this is key to the success of your event.
I was there and rode the bus a couple times. And
I didn't say that to you.
I never waited though, so I had a good experience with it, so.
I have a question that's more based on like a musician, songwriter, artist trying to promote themselves, and given your guys' experience in festivals, I think you would have a good opinion about this. As a Missoula artist, I've played in several bands, but I've always had difficulty reaching an all ages audience. We have a rich musical community, but pretty much every musical opportunity is 21 plus and revolved around alcohol to some extent, barring River City Roots, Downtown Tonight, and whatnot. What advice would you give to a new artist that's trying to reach an all ages fan base, or specifically under 21, basically consumer of the arts that's in that pivotal music experience age?
So when we do music selection for Out to Lunch and Downtown Tonight, and those are, all audiences, we're really looking for lively, upbeat, fun, happy, joyful music. So, the single songwriter with the acoustic guitar doesn't really fit that event very well. Or, the metal, headbanging music, or the, cry in my beer kind of music. So, you really want bright, happy, joyful, upbeat music that, and we'll listen to 3 different MP3 files, and in that, short minute or 2 that you get for each of those, you're really trying to, exhibit what your music is about. So that's my advice.
So I think we got time for maybe one more question. Anybody? Or we get to stop early? All right.
I have one question. If you were to split up your marketing costs, what do you spend on marketing percentage-wise for each of these events?
It depends upon the event.
River City.
So River City Roots Festival, like you said, $12,000 to $14,000 a year for marketing.
What's that percentage of your full budget?
10% of a $120,000 budget. But like Out to Lunch and Downtown Tonight is a smaller percentage, because you get bigger bang for your buck, because not only are you cross-marketing, but you've got 13 weeks of events, so you get a little bigger bang for your buck.
I'd say probably 5. And I would say we understand. We should be spending more. But 5.
But you're selling out your events.
Yeah, but there's things that we can focus on, the educational component of things that we can create more awareness.
Ours is probably 10%, and I would say 60 to 70% of that spend is digital marketing.
Okay.
So I think we're out of time. Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much.